Okay, so Shmuel has been or was a chief digital officer at Carrefour, kind of the European Walmart, and he has some very interesting insight that he will share with us. Later on, I'm gonna start with a little bit of introduction and refresh. And with the idea today is to talk about competition according to Torah. And this all started by a discussion we had after our Shavuot class about Ruth. So I we'll start talking about that, and then Shmuel will give us some business insights. So this way we have a session with business insights. So the common understanding about competition in the business world the common understanding is that you need to be a ruthless competitor in order to win. And we would like to challenge this thinking. Is there a way to compete or to do business in an ethical way? Is there a way to do it with more partnerships and less competing? What are we losing when we become obsessed by competition? So that's kind of the things we're going to talk about today. And Ruth actually is a very interesting topic and personality, because we have seen that Ruth is a disruptor. She is a person which disrupted Jewish history. And King David was born from the descendants of Ruth. And yet Ruth was a very modest person. And also Moshe, if you think about Moshe was also revolutionary, and it triggered huge historical changes in the world. And he rebelled against ancient Egypt. Nevertheless, he was very modest. So maybe there is something to learn there. And when we go back to Ruth's father, if we start with Ruth's father to just try to reframe Ruth's personality, the Midrash tells us that Ruth's father was King Eglon. King Eglon was a worshipper king of Moab, and an enemy of the state of Israel. And he ended up being killed by the judge Ehud. If you have learned the name Ehud, there are a lot of Ehuds in Israel. This came from Judge Ehud, which was a Jewish leader which killed King Eglon. And Ehud killed King Eglon by like a spy. He came to the king. He was hiding a knife, a very sharp knife, which was sharpened on both sides. And he hid his knife, and he asked to talk to the king. And the Midrash tells us something very surprising. Rabbi Bevai, in the name of Rabbi Reuven, said Ruth and Orpah were King Eglon's daughters. So when we read about Ruth and Orpah, the two daughters-in-law of Naomi, we don't realize, but according to the Midrash, they are from a king descendants, from King Eglon descendants. Naomi and Eliezer, her husband, were also were leaders, social leaders, and wealthy people in the land of Yehuda. So it's not surprising that the son of Ruth the sons of Naomi, the sons of Naomi and Elimelech, got married, they assimilated and got married with King Zeglon's daughters. So, it's like Jews getting very high in society and using marriage as a way to come up the social ladder. But then what we learn from the Midrash is that indeed Ehud came to King Eglon and he told him, I have for you a word from Elohim, from Hashem. I have a godly message to tell you. And Eglon, surprisingly enough, stood up from his chair. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, you stood up for my respect, Lirvodi, you stood up from your chair. I swear that I will put a son from your descendants on my chair. So basically what Hashem told Eglon is that he will have a descendant, and in this case Hashem is alluding to David HaMelech, King David. King David is a descendant of Eglon. And Hashem has committed a swear to Eglon that because Eglon stood up when he heard that Ehud had a word from Hashem, when he heard Elohim, he stood up. He stood up despite the fact that he was a king. He wanted to give respect to the Creator. And because nevertheless he was a worshipper, he was an enemy of Israel. But here we see that he is seen by Hashem himself as a man of merit. And not only a man of merit, but his merit will be to have one of his descendants to sit on Hashem's chair, to be the Messiah. So what do we see from this? We see that Ruth had a special father, and she has some very high lights from above in her soul coming from her father. And she's a paradoxal personality. In one end, or Eglon in one end is a non-Jew, a worshipper, an enemy of Israel, but at the same time he has respect for Hashem. And Ruth inherits these attributes from her father. She's taking these lights of chaos, these chaotic lights, and she is rectifying these lights. And this is the story of convert, to take lights which has been sparks, which has been disseminated among the peoples, and to get them back to their source. So that's also what this Midrash is telling us, that there was some spark of holiness in Ruth's father. And then we see this duality in Ruth's behavior. Ruth is taking action. Ruth is, as soon as after she committed to follow Naomi, and she committed to follow her God, to even die where she will die, Ruth takes action to save Naomi. First, to save Naomi physically by feeding her as they got back to the land of Israel, to the land of Judah, near Bethlehem, a couple of miles from where I am right now. She went to the field to glean the grain. Based on the Torah mitzvot, if some shibolim, some grain are falling, you cannot take them, they will belong to the poor. So the poor can glean the ears of grains which has been left in the field. And this is not supposedly a daughter of Israel doing this job, because it's more for men to do this, because you are exposing yourself to other poor people which will fight for this food. You are exposing yourself to the people, the reapers which are working in the fields. Nevertheless, Ruth takes action and takes and behave at the boundaries of the modesty rules, and she's going to the field. But at the same time, Ruth is extremely modest. She has a very special behavior, very respectful behavior, very moral. And when we learn from Rashi that she would glean only 2 ears, not 3. She doesn't want to take too much. She's very honest. And she would also be very modest in her behavior, because she would glean the standing ears while standing. And the lying ones were sitting in order to avoid bending over. So she was very careful not to unveil her legs. She would glean in such a way, she would bow down when to glean the lying ones, and she will stand for the standing ears. So there is this paradox in Ruth. She's outgoing, she has a lot of energy, and we'll see that she's even disruptive, yet she's very modest. And even more so with Naomi, when Naomi is actually really breaking the boundaries of halacha, because Naomi, when Ruth comes back and she learned that the field was Boaz's field, our kinsman, she waits for the weeks of the Omer, and nothing happened. She was hopeful that Boaz will continue the relationship, will develop the relationship with Ruth, and they will get married, and the house of Naomi will be rebuilt, because Boaz was a relative of Naomi and Elimelech, her husband. And according to the law of Ibum, when a married man passed away, there is an obligation for one of the brother of this man to actually marry the woman, to give continuation and a descendants to the defunct husband. So Boaz is a potential Ibum fulfiller. He can be the redeemer of the family. And Naomi understand very quickly the opportunity. But 7 weeks of the Omer passed, and nothing happened. And then again, Naomi takes action. And in this case, she takes action, which is breaking the boundaries of halacha, because she is asking Ruth to seduce Boaz. She asked her to bath, to anoint herself, to put your clothes, and to go and meet with Boaz at night when he lies down at the place of the Goren, where they are when they are storing all the barley, the threshing floor, and she has to uncover his feet and lie down. So basically, she is initiating a forbidden relationship, Beilat Znut. And there are questions by the commentaries why she's doing that. So what we see that eventually, Boaz refrained himself from having the relationship with Ruth that night. The Midrash tells us that he was a hero, a gibor, like Yosef. He is compared to Yosef in the house of Potiphar with Potiphar's wife advances, which Yosef ended up rejecting. And Boaz, the Midrash tells us, has a hard time to reject, but he is able to retain himself. And because of the initiative and the ability of Ruth and Naomi to break through boundaries, together with the retention, the ability to refrain himself of Boaz, this ended up leading to the birth of King David and the redemption. So this is a story of a lot of paradox, breaking boundaries, breaking through boundaries, and rebelling against the given order, but at some time doing it in a way which is modest, because at the end of the day, Ruth is doing all this in order to rebuild Naomi's house. And Naomi is doing it in order to provide a descendants to Ruth. And eventually this leads to the unification of Israel, of Rachel and Leah, and of the kingdom of David. So that's kind of the background that we kind of discussed most of it before Shavuot, a month ago. So maybe Shmuel, you want to take it from here? And I will continue after you are done.
Okay. So hello everyone. As you will hear, I am as French as Yaacov. You'll see that from my French accent. So I'm French, I live in Canada, I live in Montreal, and I am currently converting. So what I'm trying to do, I've been working in Carrefour, which is, Yaacov said, the European Walmart. I've been an executive a big part of my career. And what I'm trying to do is to integrate Torah concept inside the business. So this is where we are discussing with Yaacov on that specific topic of Ruth and seeing Ruth as a disruptor, but a different kind of disruptor than the one that we see today. Because when we look at disruption today, usually with disruption, we go with destruction. When people disrupt something, is destroying the things that he is disrupting. So if you look in business world, you will see Uber, for instance, that destroyed the taxi business, which led to a lot of taxi almost revolution or revolts and sometimes street violence in some European cities, and even to restrictive legislation. You will see cities like Paris or Barcelona in which the government had to take action against this almost civil unrest. And you will see that in almost every kind of business in which someone is disrupting it to take the place, but to take the place, it has to destroy a whole industry, and with a whole industry, a whole bunch of people and people's job, and it leads to civil unrest and to issues. And this is not what I see in Ruth, and I think we've been discussing at length with Yaacov on that topic. Ruth, especially at the end of the story, no one is telling her anything about what did you do. Yaacov just told us that she is not breaking, but doing something that is still on the halachic code, but not totally what everyone would do. And I think this is disruption. Doing so, she generates King David, which is in business terms probably the biggest value creation ever. but no one is telling her anything. There is no battle in the story. No one is combating her. No one is raising the hand saying, this is impossible. No one is saying, Boaz, what are you doing? No one is telling her anything. At the end of the story, everyone says, okay, thank you. And everyone is even enjoy about what she's doing. And this is what, and I don't want to downsize Ruth into a business concept, right? Because she's so much more than what we are talking about. So I'm just trying to bring some lesson from what she's getting. But she's showing us that we can actually disrupt without destroying anything. So we can compete without competing. We don't need to fight. And the way she's doing it, it's funny, you use that, Yaacov. You said in the business world, you need to be ruthless. Well, I think you need to be just ruthless, not ruthless.
This is very good.
and
so it's not about ruthless, it's about being Ruth.
Yeah, Ruth, I think is enough. And yeah, this is probably how we can start. We can expand, but this is probably the first concept that I wanted to bring in the conversation.
Good. So actually, so we have on the chat here.
Yeah, not ruthful. Because ruthful means that I was thinking about it. Ruthful would mean that we need more than Ruth. And I think just Ruth will really be totally awesome in the business world as compared to what is today.
Thank you, Lana. This is very good. So I think, I was surprised because, so I want to maybe dig more into this concept. And we switch a little bit to business and talking about, actually, I saw that there are some research and some articles being done in the academic world. And this is from a business school of ethical business. And actually they made, there is a research which has been done when they look at people doing a task, like they were supposed to come up with the maximum number of words with letters that they were given. And they saw that when people were doing it on their own, without any interaction, their performance were better than when they were doing in a competition. When, and I will send a link to this research that when people start to feel competition, they defocus from their task. And rather than focusing on their own performance, they are focusing on the other performance, the people they are competing with. And actually, sometimes they're going to have unethical behavior to try to sabotage the other people's performance. And they ended up finding less words with the same number of letters. So it's actually, while in most of the business world, ruthlessness has been like being ruthless has been viewed, being a bully, being a bulldozer, being tough, bare knuckle, I say, business, not to be a tough negotiator. So actually, there is more and more, and we have been talking about the rise of the feminine. I think one of the things we see in the business world that they are adopting some of these concepts which are already in the Torah of the rise of the feminine. In this case, a way to do business which is more inclusive and which is more trying to look for partnerships. Yes, thriving for very high performance, but maybe rather than defocusing myself and looking at the other people's business, developing my own business. And that's maybe what I would like to dive into, and maybe hear also from everybody what you guys think. So let's look at competition in Tehillim. Did you know Tehillim is talking about competition or non-compete? There is a non-compete clause in Tehillim. And actually, I found that I did a search for tacharut, which is competition in Hebrew, in the archive of Rabbi Ginsburg. There is almost no subject that he didn't talk about in the last 40 years. And may we'll have refuah shelema, Elfi, may will be Elfi. So we have a very deep Tehillim, 37. לדוד, אל תתחר במרעים ואל תקנא בעושי עוולה. Do not compete with evildoers. Do not envy those who commit injustice. So King David is saying you shouldn't compete with the bad people, and you shouldn't envy the successful people. You know, a lot of time this Mizmor is actually talking about how do we relate to the outside world. You know, we look at the outside world and you see a lot of colors, a lot of success, a lot of wealth, a lot of good life. And, you know, we want to be successful. We want to be part of that. So the Mizmor, King David in Tehillim tells us, be careful. Do not compete. And he's saying, you know, some of his success is temporary, for they will be speedily cut off like grass and wither like green vegetation. Trust in Hashem and do good. This is very good for business as a business slogan. Batach be'Hashem ve'aseh tov. Dwell in the land and be nourished by faith. So actually, this is an alternative business plan. We can read it. Itaneg al Hashem, very deep concept. Leitaneg al Hashem, should we delight in Hashem? You need to delight in Hashem. And he will give you what your heart desires. Commit your way to Hashem and trust in him, and he will act. And he will reveal your righteousness like the light. V'otzi kahor tzidkatcha, and your trial like noon. Wait for Hashem and hope for him. Do not compete. Again, we have a second, this is very rare. We have a second mention of compete. Do not compete with the one whose way prospers. In Hebrew, al titchar b'matzliach. Here we have the concept of matzliach, which is success. The translation should be whose way succeeds. And then we have why, eref miaf, disease from anger. Because once you compete, you may fall into anger. And azov chema, and forsake wrath. Do not compete only to do evil. So that's competition by King David. And King David was a master of competition. He had to compete against King Shaul. And if we dive a little more into the semantic, and as Rabbi Ginsburg is always analyzing the word in Hebrew. So the word in Hebrew is tacharut. You see it on the right. This means competition. But if you remove the taf, remove the first letter, what do you get? Cherut, which is freedom. So there is something good in competition. Free competition leads to freedom. And we don't want to compete in order not to fall in evil, as we just have read. And what is the root? You know, in Hebrew, it's very powerful. Every word has the 3 letters root. The shoresh. And the shoresh of tacharut is chore. Resh, chet, resh, hey. And what that means in English, to be angry. So there is in the root of competition, there is anger, as we have read before. You know, this is what the King David is saying. Do not eref miaf, disease from anger. That's why you shouldn't compete. Because what's happening when we compete? We became angry. We became jealous. We move from competition to rivalry. In the article, they say competition is healthy, rivalry is not healthy and is counterproductive. And what happens when you compete with, you may end up with anger. And this goes back to tzitzit. We talked about tzitzit last week. And we talk about tzitzit being the rectification of sight. You shouldn't be prostituted by your eyes and your hearts. What happens when we are too close to this world, when we look at success, when we want to compete in order to mimic the competitor, we're going to be swallowed by this world. We're going to become angry. We're going to lose our identity. And what we need to do in order to be successful is to develop our identity rather than mimicking our competitor's identity. And that's what this verse is saying us. And we see that from the root. Competition can be good, it leads to freedom, but you need to be careful not to fall into angriness and rivalry and unethical behavior and being ruthless. So this also, so that's an insight that we can see. And maybe the other thing, when we see in the Gemara, when we look at success, so competition is to be successful. You want to compete to win, to achieve success. And the Gemara is telling us that, listen, Chaye benem umezone, lo b'zchut atalya milta, ela b'mazal atalya milta. Don't think that health, family, and professional success depend on deeds, on good deeds. They don't. You may be a very decent man and still you won't succeed. They depend on mazal. What is mazal? And we discussed that. Who is ish matzliach in the Torah? It's Yosef. Yosef is being defined as a man of success. And he's being characterized as a man of success during his failures, when he's in the pit. When he's in, or actually when he's in the Potiphar house, and when he's in prison, Ish Matzliach, he's a man of success. And what is success is to be connected to your mazal. What is mazal? We learned last time when we talk about Yosef, that mazal is the root of our soul, our true self. Success is to be fidel to your true self. You are successful when you are yourself, when you unveil your true self. How do you unveil your true self? You need to avoid competition, which will lead to anger and which will lead to mimic successful people. The success is not outside of you, the success starts within you. And it's only when you connect to your mazal, to the higher, to your supraconscious, only then you are connected to your true identity. You have a flow of your soul connected to the higher worlds, to the divinity above you, which will penetrate your intellect, penetrate your emotions, and that's by itself is success. Because you are yourself. And at that level, you cannot be stopped. At that level, you have already the nitzots of Moshe Rabbeinu. You have already the spark of Moshe Rabbeinu, as it's written in the Tanya. Everyone in Israel has the spark of Moshe Rabbeinu. And as the Rebbe said, every one of us can bring the Geula. It's only once every one of us is connected to his true self, to his supraconsciousness, when we are fidel to our true identity and we fully express ourselves, that's we become all successful, and this lead to Geula. And actually, before we take question, if you look at the Rambam is saying exactly that in his last law of the entire book of Mishneh Torah. In that era, in the era of Mashiach, in the era of, actually this is after Mashiach, this is the second phase of the kingdom of Hashem, during the time of the kingdom of Hashem, after the building of the Bet HaMikdash, after the sovereignty of Israel on the entire land of Israel, after all Israel coming back to the land of Israel, then Hashem will reveal himself, because we'll reach this level of consensuousness. And in that era, there will be neither famine or war, envy or competition. No more competition, no more envy. For good will flow in abundance, and all delights will be freely available as dust. So here we see this paradox. We will be very rich, very wealthy, extremely successful. Delights will be freely available as dust. We will be in an economy of wealth, extraordinary wealth. But no competition, no envy. Because there is, once everybody is fidel to everyone in Israel is connecting to his supraconscious, then Hashem is being revealed, and we enter the kingdom of Hashem, and we are all connected directly to Hashem. And at that time, the world will be filled with the knowledge of God as waters covers the ocean bed. So that's the vision of Torah, the vision of Torah. And this is why Ruth and what Shmuel said about her ability to win or to be matzliach and to progress history, to bring King David. There is no bigger success than that without competition. It's exactly what the Rambam is saying here, which is saying we will live in a world of abundance, tremendous abundance, tremendous wealth. Nevertheless, no competition, no envy. Okay, so you can unmute, and I think Tova wanted to say, and then Yael.